Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video, wherever you are, whatever you may be doing. Thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today we're going to be talking about college football, and I'll tell you exactly what the topic is going to be coming up here in just a few short seconds. Before I do, let me quickly say that I've got two shout outs coming up at the end of the video, so please stay tuned for those. But today I'm going to be talking about the top 25 college football head coaches as we head into the 2022 season. Now, if you've been a subscriber and watched our videos for a while, you know that back the week that college football ended, I said that I would still be doing different college football videos periodically, even during the off season, and I'm going to try to do, if not one every week, at least one every couple of weeks up until April or May. And then, just like last year, when April or May gets here, we'll start looking ahead to some of the 2022 college football schedules. But as of right now, I want to talk about the top 25 college football head coaches. Now, these are not new head coaches. They may be new at their school they're at now, but they're not new head coaches. If you have any thoughts on this, please feel free to let me know. Number 25 on my list is PJ Fleck. Now, me personally, I think PJ Fleck is just a gimmick. If you recall, when he first left Western Michigan and went to Minnesota, they had that great year, and he started saying, "Row the boat," and all that kind of stuff. And then after their double-digit win season, they've been average. I mean, it's still good for Minnesota, but it's not what they expected when they hired him and were good right away. And now it seems like they're stuck in, 8-4, 9-3 territory. Number 24 on the list is another Big Ten head coach, Paul Chryst. Now, all my Georgia fans and friends out there should know this backstory, but in case you don't, Barry Alvarez is the athletic director at Wisconsin. And the reason why I brought Georgia up is because it seemed like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Georgia went to the Outback Bowl about every year and either played Purdue or Wisconsin. So longtime Georgia fans should know the name of Barry Alvarez pretty good. Barry Alvarez was Wisconsin's head coach back then, and he resigned and became their athletic director. And he originally hired Gary Anderson as their head coach. But if you follow Wisconsin, you know their old-fashioned football, their I-formation pro style is what they are. Well, Gary Anderson tried to get away from that and become more modernized, and Barry Alvarez didn't like that. He still wants to play, 80s football. So he got rid of Gary Anderson and brought on Paul Chryst. And Paul Chryst basically runs the same kind of offense that Barry Alvarez did. And every year Wisconsin comes out in the top 10, and every year they'll finish 7-5 or 8-4, and they just can't get past that. They're one of the few teams that still gives their running back the ball 25, 30 times a game. There's just nothing flashy about them. They're just going to line up and run the ball, and if they can beat you 10-7 every week, they'd be perfectly okay with doing that. Number 23 is Jimbo Fisher, and I'm sure there are a lot of pundits out there that have him way higher on that list, but I'm just not a fan of Jimbo Fisher. I don't know how you can make $8 million every year and finish top 3 or 4 in recruiting and go 8-4. And National Signing Day is less than 2 weeks away because it's always the first Wednesday in February. And as of right now, according to most people and most charts that you look at, A&M is top 3 in recruiting right now. And I just about bet you anything in 2022 they're going to go 8-4 or 9-3. That's what they do. So I just can't have Jimbo Fisher higher than that. I don't care how much money he makes. I'm not putting you higher on the list when you have that kind of talent and you go 8-4, which is what they do every stinking year. Number 22 is Mario Cristobal, and I know I've said before here on the channel that I'm not a big fan of Cristobal, which I'm not. He always had that great talent at Oregon, but every year he would find a way to lose at least one game he had no business losing. But Miami has been stuck in mediocrity now since the 80s, it seems like. I know it hasn't been that long, but it seems like it's been that long. So if he can go to Miami and go 8-4 or 9-3, they'd be fine with that. At Oregon, that's not good, but Miami's been stuck in mediocrity so long. If he goes there and goes 9-3 his first year, they'd be fine with that. Number 21 on my list is James Franklin. I'm not a big fan of James Franklin, but he's been at Penn State for a long time, and he's a better coach than Fleck and Christ and Fisher and Cristobal, so you got to put him somewhere. But Penn State's just like Wisconsin. They're top 10 every year when the season starts and season ends, and they'll be 8-4. And number 20 on my list is Pat Narduzzi. I want to put him higher on the list, but I can't do that because Pat Narduzzi is the Pittsburgh coach, as we all know, and they just had a phenomenal year, but they lost Kenny Pickett. Now, I know they've got Keaton Slovis, the transfer from USC, coming in, but in case you don't know, Mark Whipple, who has been their offensive coordinator the last 3 years, actually resigned, and he resigned supposedly for personal reasons. Then he took the job as a Nebraska offensive coordinator like the very next day. So instead of just jumping ship from Pittsburgh to Nebraska, he stepped down and then went to Nebraska. So I'm not sure what Pittsburgh's going to have this year. And we know Pat Narduzzi is a defensive specialist, but hopefully he'll be able to find somebody on the offensive side of the ball to run that offense close to as good as what Mark Whipple had done the past 3 years. Number 19 on the list is Matt Campbell, and just like Pat Narduzzi, I want to put Matt Campbell higher. I'm actually a big fan of Matt Campbell personally, especially after they played Clemson in their bowl game, and Dabo Swinney had so many good things to say about Matt Campbell. But 2 straight years, Iowa State has supposedly had all this talent and been so good, and I believe this year they came out ranked 8th or 9th when the year started, and they went 7-5. So I like Matt Campbell as a person, but when you have that kind of talent, you should do something besides 7-5 or 8-4. Number 18 is Sam Pittman, and I can't say enough good things about Sam Pittman. I think he's an amazing head coach, and I think he has Arkansas going in the right direction, and I think KJ Jefferson coming back should help Arkansas out tremendously. Number 17 on my list is Dave Clawson, and I'm actually a big fan of Dave Clawson as far as being a head coach. If you look at everywhere he's ever coached, including Fordham, he's always been a winner. If you can win at Fordham, then obviously you're a good head coach. But that mesh offense they run, it just doesn't work when they play top-tier teams, and which is why they always lose to top-tier teams. But he's doing great things at Wake Forest, and now they're losing so much that even though they're bringing Sam Hartman back, I just don't think they're going to be near as good as they were this past year. Number 16 is Dave Doeren, and Dave Doeren, I hate to put this high because, as I've said before, he is the most boring person you could ever talk to. Just no personality at all. I feel sorry for all the media people that have to go to ACC Media Days and ask him questions because you get nothing out of him. And because of that, I don't want to rank him so high, but he's a good head coach. If he could get better talent at NC State, they'd be a top 10 team. And Devin Leary's coming back next year, and Devin Leary is coming off a year where he had like 35 touchdowns and I think 5 interceptions. And 7 touchdowns to 1 interception ratio is pretty stinking good. Now, I know they're losing both their running backs, but they're bringing back Devin Leary and a couple of their receivers. So I think NC State's actually in for another good season. Number 15 on my list is Billy Napier. And I want to put him higher because I want him to be successful. because I think college football is better when Florida is good. But I've already seen a couple of his press conferences and some of the things he said, and so far I'm just not sold on Billy Napier. So as of right now, he's number 15 in my book. Number 14 is Jamey Chadwell, and I'd like to put Jamey Chadwell higher only because he coaches Coastal Carolina, and I would love to see them be a really good team. And this past year, they were supposed to be a really good team, but they actually weren't any better this year than they were last year. Number 13 on my list is Mark Stoops, and you have to put Mark Stoops that high for him to consistently go to Kentucky year in and year out and basically never have a quarterback worth a darn and still win 8 or 9 games. Which, by the way, I don't know if you've heard this yet or not, but let me be the first to say that in my personal opinion, whenever Kirk Ferentz retires, and I don't know when that's going to be because Iowa keeps giving him an extension every single year, but whenever Kirk Ferentz retires, I think Mark Stoops is going to be the next coach at Iowa, which is the reason why I think he's held on at Kentucky all this time, because I think he's waiting for the Iowa job to come open, because the Stoops family is from Iowa and Mark Stoops played for Iowa. So I think he'll be the next head coach at Iowa whenever Kirk Ferentz decides to retire. Anyway, back to the countdown. Number 12 is Lane Kiffin, and I know there's still a lot of people that don't like Lane Kiffin because of all of his past transgressions. I personally think he's a changed man. I think a lot of the things he says now, he just says to get folks started, because a lot of times if you watch him, he's snickering when he says it. I think he just likes to get everybody started because he knows how many folks just hate him. But I'd like to put him higher on the list as well. But they're losing Matt Corral, and I'm still not sure who their quarterback is going to be. But I think we all know by now that Lane Kiffin has proven he can run an offense no matter who the quarterback is. Number 11 is Mike Gundy. I think Oklahoma State's coming off a great season, and I think they're going to be good this upcoming season as well. Maybe not quite as good as they were in 2021, but they're still going to be good. Number 10 on my list is the man I was just talking about, Kirk Ferentz. And I know he doesn't get the credit he deserves because Iowa, most of the time, is consistently an 8-win football team. But if you look at the talent they get, if you ever actually pay attention to Iowa's recruiting, most years they finish between 40th and 50th in recruiting, which is not bad, but you got to think about in the Big Ten, if you're 40th or 50th, you're behind like 7 teams. So you're 8th or 9th maybe in recruiting in Big Ten, and you still win 8 or 9 football games. I think that's pretty good. And then you look at the NFL now, there's like 3 or 4 of the top, if not the top tight ends right now in the NFL, all came from Iowa. And the only reason they came from Iowa is because when they came out of high school, they only had like 2 or 3 actual scholarship offers because they weren't that good. But they improved yearly at Iowa under Kirk Ferentz. So if anybody doubts Kirk Ferentz's coaching ability, they're crazy. Number 9 is Lincoln Riley, and I was actually a big fan of Lincoln Riley until the 2021 season, and I'm hoping it was just because he decided by the middle of October he was leaving and going to USC, but because of how bad he made Oklahoma's offense look in 2021, I just can't put him any higher than number 9. Number 8 is Brian Kelly, and the only reason I put Brian Kelly this high, I know he hasn't coached 1 game at LSU, but we're talking about a man that won at Grand Valley State, he won at Central Michigan, he won at Cincinnati, and he won at Notre Dame. So the man has won everywhere he's ever coached. And he's a way better coach than Ed Orgeron is, and a way better coach than Les Miles was. So I think LSU upgraded as far as a head coach, but I just don't know if they upgraded as far as recruiting. But Brian Kelly has won everywhere he's ever been. So when a guy wins everywhere he goes, you can't doubt his coaching ability. Number 7 is Mike Leach. And the reason I got Mike Leach this high is because Will Rogers in 2020 looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in America. And in 2021, he was much improved, and Mississippi State actually attempted to play defense this year. And we all know Mike Leach is an offensive mastermind. So if they can play defense at all, their offense is going to keep improving. And Mike Leach has always done this. When he was at Washington State, he had a quarterback named Luke Falk. And Luke Falk couldn't throw a ball 5 yards when he was a freshman. But by the time he became a senior, a lot of people thought he was an NFL quarterback, which he wasn't. But Mike Leach just knew how to make him look good. And it's kind of the same way with Will Rogers. So I'm expecting Mississippi State to be even better in 2022. Number 6 on my list is Kyle Whittingham. And you have to put him that high because Utah improves every year as the year goes on. This year they started out like 1-3 or 2-3, and then the rest of the season they were phenomenal. And they almost beat Ohio State in that great Rose Bowl. So to have the talent he does at Utah and still win 9 or 10 games every year, I think is great. Number 5 for me is Luke Fickell. You got to give the man his credit for taking Cincinnati to the playoffs, but they lost so much that I just don't expect them to win more than about 9 games in the upcoming season, but we'll wait and see. And number 4 is Ryan Day. Ryan Day has actually done a really good job at Ohio State when he took over for Urban Meyer, but this past year they just completely forgot what defense was. So until Ohio State starts playing some kind of defense, I just can't rank Ryan Day any higher than where he is. Number 3 on my list is Kirby Smart. You got to give the man credit for winning a national championship. I know a lot of people still doubt his philosophy when it comes to quarterbacks. And now there's a lot of hoopla around the University of Georgia because of JT transferring and so many players transferring. And one of the players even came out and said he transferred because Stetson Bennett's coming back. But you still got to give the man credit for winning a national championship. And the top 2 on my list shouldn't be no surprise. Number 2 is Dabo Swinney. And I've mentioned it before, and I'll say it again, that a lot of people think 2021 was his best coaching year yet because you played like 5 games with 7 scholarship wide receivers that were out hurt. And your quarterback played pretty much the entire year hurt, but he still played right through it. Your best offensive lineman got hurt, and there was so much turmoil behind the scenes because Clemson had one down year, even though to me, 10-3, if that's a down year, I'll take that every time there's a down year. But there was so much hoopla and turmoil going on behind the scenes. And then, of course, Robbie Caldwell announced his retirement, and Dabo knew about it before the season started, but he didn't say anything until after the season. And there was just so much going on behind the scenes because of supposedly one down year. And then, of course, so many Clemson fans got mad because Dabo said he won't use the transfer portal. So to make all the fans happy, he finally used the transfer portal this week and brought back a former Clemson quarterback that transferred from Clemson. But now he's back at Clemson. He's going to be like 3rd or 4th string, so he's probably not going to play. But he came back to be a grad assistant, and Dabo said, hey, you've got 1 year left. Why don't you just play? So he's going to be on the roster, but he's probably not going to play much. But that was just Dabo trying to appease all the fans that are mad that he won't use the transfer portal. So you got to put Dabo up there. And number 1, of course, to me, is Nick Saban. And nobody should be surprised that Nick Saban is number 1. And I said right after the national championship game that I think he showed this year he's still a great coach because Alabama just didn't have the talent this year that they normally have. And I think it showed throughout the season because they struggled with so many teams that they normally mop the floor with. But then when it came down to the nitty-gritty, time to play, they showed up. So even though Nick Saban is 70 years old, you still Can't doubt the man's coaching style. So that's my top 25 head coaches as we head into the 2022 season. Any thoughts on that, please feel free to let me know. My two shout outs today, one goes out to my man Josh, who is actually a co-worker of mine, and I've been working with him for a couple of months now, but I just haven't had the time to talk to him yet about the YouTube page, and I finally told him, and turns out he's a wrestling fan, so he should enjoy the channel because everybody knows we talk wrestling on here at least once every couple of weeks or so. And then another one goes out to my man Steven, who lives in South Carolina. He said all his friends call him Stone Cold because of the way he looks, and of course he is a Clemson fan. You can never have too many Clemson fans here on the channel. Josh and Steven, thank you so much for subscribing. And if you do so choose to comment on any video at any time, you will be eligible for our 1,000 subscriber giveaway whenever we get to 1,000 subscribers. So tell your friends, tell your family, give the video a thumbs up, and thank you so much for subscribing. And for my dad joke today, I was going to tell you a construction joke, but I'm still working on it. And that is your dad joke of the day. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.